I think there's a tremendous amount of misunderstanding about what the Tea Party movement is. The Tea Party movement cannot be analyzed through the traditional political lens of American politics. It is not a political party. It is not a third party. It is not the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. The Tea Parties are basically a manifestation of a sentiment in America that the political process is broken, that it is particularly in Washington, is out of touch with the real world, that the way they view things in Washington, in both parties, is completely different from how the way the real people in the real world are living their lives. I mean, it's like they live in two different planets. The people in the real world live in one planet, and the people in Washington and in politics live in another. That's what I've picked up throughout the last 18 months. And I think the Tea Party movement and all of this frustration in American politics is about that massive disconnect that exists. And so the question becomes, how can we get the political class more connected to what life is like in the real world? And that's a real challenge. Because when you get elected and you go to Washington, you become a part of the most powerful political culture in human history. A place where the budget appropriators in Congress call themselves the cardinals, you know, where senators ask you to get off the elevator if they're on it because they need to ride on by themselves. I don't know if you guys are aware of all this, but it's really a bizarre alternative universe that exists. Latin American policy has been neglected for a significant period of time through 3 administrations in terms of the priority it should take, and I think to our detriment because, you know, going back to economics, but I think it all ties together. The United States and Florida would be an incredible beneficiary of strong, stable economies throughout Latin America, and to some extent, you know, that's not where our focus is. And you start going through the litany of places where I think there are good ideas, good things happening. I mean, I think there's Chile is a country, for example, not Chile. Let's start with Colombia. I mean, Colombia shows promise. Colombia is certainly better off today than it was 10 years ago. That's a great example. And that's why things like the free trade agreement with Colombia are so important. On the other hand, you have to look at the destabilizing influence that Hugo Chavez has in South America and how's that spread to, you know, Ortega in Nicaragua, Morales, and so all of these things are spreading throughout the region, and America's absence from the region is allowing this to grow.
On this issue of the Republican credit card that's been nagging at you for a few months, some of the stuff that comes out kind of raises the question about, are you a big spender? In other words, are you really the fiscal conservative you say you are? And how do you respond to people who criticize that? Because obviously your opponents try to use that all the time.
Well, for 2 things. The first is that
drunken sailor spending?
No, look, the first, yeah, I don't think that adds up to that. Let me say a couple things about it. Number one is when I talk about fiscal conservatism in the context of government spending, and it's not in the context of some ideological religious adherence to some rigid ideology. It is in the context of the fact that our government spends more money than it takes in, and you cannot do that over a sustained period of time without bankrupting your country. And if you don't believe that, look at Greece, look at Portugal, look at Italy, look at the nations of Western Europe that are now struggling with that. And that's the argument that I make on the fiscal conservatism side. I think you need to have pro-growth strategies that grow your economy, and I think you need a government that constrains how much money it spends, because otherwise your economy can't grow fast enough to sustain it. On the Republican Party stuff, as far as that's concerned, I mean, that was used for political expenditures. There were instances where if there's something on there that was personal, I paid for it directly out of my own pocket to American Express. And that's not my statement, that's a fact. That is a matter of fact. That's just a fact. And so, but they're 2 very different issues.
Are you in debt? Are you too much in debt in your life? You know, you've got a young family. That's come up as well. You've got a young family. You have, what, 4 kids? It's a lot, and the bad economy.
You saying kids are expensive?
Well, I got 2. I tell you they're expensive.
Look, here, again, that's another one that just puzzles me, and I'll tell you why. Here's the debt that I have, okay? I've used a mortgage to buy a home in Miami. I've used a mortgage to buy a home in Tallahassee. I think people would be shocked to learn, almost everyone I know has used a mortgage to buy. I mean, that's how people, I don't know a lot of people that buy their houses cash. Certainly not people that live in West Miami. So I have mortgages, yes, I have a mortgage. So do like everybody else I know. I have a student loan, which I got to go to law school because my mom was a stock clerk at Kmart. My dad was a cashier, and my dad was a bartender. My parents couldn't save money to send me to school, so I had to borrow money. I make payments on that. And I have a car lease. I have a pickup truck that I own cash. That's the extent of my debt. That's what I owe. Believe me, I wish I didn't have a student loan. I really do. But I do, and that's what paid for me to go to law school. And I can't say I gladly pay Sally Mae every month, but I pay Sally Mae every month. My point is that these are the real world issues. I mean, everybody I know that I went to law school with has law school loans because the University of Miami is really expensive. And if they're watching, you know, I hope they understand that. And I do have mortgages. That's what I used to buy my house, yes. But, I mean, so does everybody else. I mean, that's the way you buy a house.
Let me phrase it another way, though. The house you have in Tallahassee that you co-owned with David Rivera went into foreclosure, at least the proceedings of it, because there was payments behind on it. Now, if had lost a job or were unemployed, I think every Floridian would understand. That wasn't the case. Why did you fall behind the payments?
We had a disagreement with GMAC. They're the mortgage holder. We had a disagreement with them about the monthly payment calculation. The bottom line is that was worked out immediately. I mean, it was taken care of within like 48 hours of that being filed. They shouldn't have filed it, but they did. But the bottom line is that we worked that out. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it was a disagreement with the bank.
I guess the other thing that a kind of average person say is, okay, if I reach in my wallet and I have an American Express card of my own, and then I also have one from the Republican Party, wouldn't I know which one to use? Why should people view you differently?
Well, first of all, again, the 99% of the expenditures or 95% of the expenditures people have pointed to is one transaction, which was a major mistake. The rest were items that would pop up from month to month for different reasons. You know, I don't have it in front of me now. I've gone over this for the last 6 to 8 months. The important thing is that if I saw it, I paid for it. I mean, I paid for out of my own pocket directly to American Express months, quite frankly, in some instances 2 to 3 years before any of this became public to anybody. So that's a fact. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if I found an expenditure that was personal in nature, I paid for it out of my own pocket directly to American Express. The Republican Party of Florida did not pay my personal expenses.